Hi, folks. My name is Girish, the host for Back2Basics, another Back2Basics for another week. So today we're going to talk to you about finance. Finance is definitely a tough topic to talk about, not with kids, pretty much with everybody. Because you know what? It is a tough topic to talk about that we talk about salaries, we talk about payoffs, we talk about mortgages, we talk about credit card bills, but it is a reality, folks. And we have a person that we're going to talk to, and we're going to find out from her as to why is it a taboo and why is it so uncomfortable to talk in public. It's okay to talk in public about it, and you should not be embarrassed about it. So let's bring her in and let's talk to her about it all in detail. Her name is Angel, and she's talked so much in her platform. She's a podcaster too. She has her own book. So we're going to get to the details of that and basics on that. So let's get into that. So Angel, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back2Basics.
Hi, Girish. Thanks so much for having me on. I am great, and I'm excited to chat it up about finance and all of those tidbits that everyone is tuning in for.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on my show to make this brighter. Now, before we get into all the detail of and picking your brain about the education of finance and everything else, what does Back2Basic mean to you?
Ooh, that's a really great question. So, as you mentioned, I have a podcast as well, and I have a question I always ask my guests. I didn't think about how I would answer what is back to basic or how does that mean to me. So, on the fly, if I have to really give a general definition, I would say going down to your roots, going all the way back down to where you started, all the way back from the beginning, and taking it back to basics, back to what you know.
That's as simple as that, isn't it? I know, because you know what? Some people, they don't really think that it could be a simplest thing in the world. And why do we make it complicated? So I think that's what this whole show is all about, and to educate people. Uh,
Right.
and we are not saying that people are dumb. People are very educated if you give them the tool to make them understand a certain topics, certain subjects. And this is one of the subjects that we need to educate people. So thank you for that, by the way. So Angel, thank you again for coming on the show. So let me explain here um, about finance. How tough is it to talk about finance? And we're not even talking kids, we're talking even adults. So
Wow.
how do
Garish,
we how do we train the kids? How do we train the adults? So let's talk about that.
well, Garish, let me say that one, finance is such a taboo topic. And definitely in the last 10 years, you hear more people coming out to talk about finance, talk about financial literacy, how important this topic is. People like myself who are financial educators who are really going out into the community, partnering with organizations to help people understand the basics of managing their money. I always say the foundations of finance is understanding your budget before you get into investing, wealth management, all of those other things, purchasing a home. You have to understand how to manage the money that you are bringing home. And, we talk about going back to basics. When I want to relate that to finance, I don't want people to go back to basics. I tell people you have to understand your journey with money. You have to understand your money story. You have to understand the things that you were taught or weren't taught as a child, and you have to go through this process of unlearning.
Right.
But think about it. Some people, you may know, parents taught them about money at an early age. Other people's families never taught them about money. I myself never had those money conversations at home. I
Hmm.
knew you needed money to pay bills. The
Hmm.
only thing I knew is you work and you pay bills, but no one ever sat me down and said, well, this is how you actually manage the money. This is how you set a budget. These are goals that you should be setting for retirement. And if you want to purchase a home, I had to really go through the process of figuring out on my own
Yeah.
and then walking through the process of teaching others from my mistakes. So it's a very difficult topic. It's not taught in the school system. Parents don't necessarily delve too deep into the topic. And it's so needed in the community. It's needed for you to advance in your job. There are companies that will run your credit report. And if you haven't managed your money or managed your credit, you may be denied a job application. By poor finances and poor credit, it impacts your insurance rate. So many people don't understand that. But aside from those two, just your day-to-day living. So think about this last year, inflation. We're at almost a 7% inflation rate over the last 18 months. And so many people, they have a difficult time translating that into what they need to do to generate additional income, or even like scaling back. So I always like to say reduce and remove from the budget. Like if you don't have any more money coming in, you got to start scaling back. Going back to basics.
That's right. Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's dissect this whole thing, if you don't mind, right? Not too much in detail. We don't want to get too technical. If we have to, we will. But let me ask you this. A person who's making X amount of money, when I say you, I mean the person, okay? Do you say that I want more salary? Or do we say, let's go to the ground and to the basics and say, where do we need to cut? Where do we need to budget? And how the hell am I supposed to pay this off?
So that's a great question. My motto is, if you can't handle the money that you have right now, how do you handle additional income? So if you're making $40,000, $50,000 and you're saying, I can't pay my bills, I need more money, sometimes that may in fact be true. But if you haven't taken the time to do a deep dive into your finances to really understand if you are sacrificing to meet those savings goals or even save at all, how can you handle a $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 job if you're not understanding where the money is going?
That's right.
If I ask someone, how much money do you spend on groceries on average per month? There's so many people who do not know the answer to that question. There are people who don't know how much money they spend eating out. They don't know what their average is for gas. Those are things that you should know. You should pay very close attention to your finances. And if you're living a consistent life, if it's you, even if you have a family and you know you're spending, of course, groceries have skyrocketed over the last 18 months, but if you're spending a couple $100 a month, you know, okay, my grocery bill is probably averaging, I don't know, not for me per se, but $500, $600, right? And some people will stop and take a look and will say, well, why did I spend $1,000 this month and $500 this month? Like, those are things that you need to analyze. So maybe if you had people staying in your home or guests over, of course, Thanksgiving just passed, so you may have spent a little bit more money. But people should constantly be delving into those particular topics to understand where the money is going before they have the ability to manage more.
Thank you. Thank you so much, by the way, for that. So now that's your day-to-day stuff and your monthly stuff, right? Now, does that mean that I get $40 net paycheck? When I say $40, obviously it's more than that, but let's
hopefully.
say hopefully. So let's say 100, okay? Now, that does not mean that you spend 105, right? So how much do we spend? How much do we save? And then if there's any problems that we face, you know, car accidents, breakdowns, maintenance,
emergencies,
oil change.
Yes.
So how do we save for rainy days? I think that's the proper word, right? What are your thoughts on that? Should we save? Should we not save? Because it's needed sometimes.
Now you're asking the wrong person. You know, I'm going to say you should save, but I heard two questions in one. So let's go all the way back to the beginning when you were saying net pay. So many people don't even understand what that means. So there's gross pay and there's net pay. Your gross is the amount of money that you are making from your job. So if you're paid an hourly rate or a salary rate, let's take salary, for example. And when we discuss net pay, gross pay, this is where so many people in this country make the mistake of overspending because people are living based upon their gross pay. That is your total salary before taxes, before insurance, any other deductions. So if someone's making $50,000, $60,000 and they go to the bank to get a loan, they're asking for a loan based off of their gross, not the net. How can you budget off money that's not coming into your account? So your net pay is what you're bringing home after taxes, what's being deposited into the account. And that's where people should really start to organize their budget and really understanding how much money you have, how much can you afford, how much home can you afford, how much rent can you afford to pay. When we want to break it down into those needs, wants, and savings. I always say, this rule has been around for years. I didn't make this up. It's called the 50-30-20 rule. I don't know if you've heard about it, but no more than 50% of your net pay should go towards those needs. Those are the things that you are paying for to survive. So your car payment, your mortgage or your rent, you're paying your utilities, you're buying groceries. And of course, there are people who are of different faiths and have different obligations, and they will say, well, what about private school for my kid? Or what about tithing? And I always say you have to make that decision of what's appropriate for your life if you'd like to include those amounts into that needs category. When we go to the next category, it's wants. Your wants are the frivolous things because we don't need them.
That's right.
So
that's right.
The eating out, the socializing, the happy hour, the movies, or the entertainment, all of the subscriptions that we pay for on a monthly basis, the Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, those are all wants. No more than 30% of your net pay should go towards wants. And I myself think that's an extremely high number. When I'm teaching in workshops, I always tell people you can reduce that a bit, not necessarily adding more percentage to the need. But when we get down to the third category, which is your savings, at bare minimum, you should be saving 20% of your net pay. And I know it's so difficult for people in this country to do that because when we look at statistics, there are more than 70% of people in this country who do not have a budget. There's more than 60% of people in this country who are living check to check. And there's also, again, almost 70% of people who cannot afford a $1,000 emergency. So you talked about saving for the rainy day fund. There's so many people who don't even understand what that consists of.
Right.
For myself, when I'm thinking the rainy day fund, the emergency fund, traditionally it's always been 3 to 6 months of your expenses in case you lose your job.
That's right.
Or in case you have something that comes up, the car breaks down, you have a funeral, some crazy expense that's out of the ordinary. But here's something that I've been working on this particular year because the pandemic has shown us that you need more than 3 to 6 months in your emergency fund. So many people lost their jobs last year, and it took a little bit more than that 3 to 6 months to get back on track. And look at how long the unemployment was extended because people were hurting financially in this country. So I've been working to reinvent the emergency fund, helping consumers reinvent their emergency fund and letting them know you probably should start saving a little bit more. So if it's swapping out that needs and wants, so saving 30%, and limiting yourself to 20% on wants, whatever's going to help you be comfortable. Even if you want to just step away from your job or your business, some people, you need a break in life, right? And you're like, how am I going to survive? Where's the income coming from?
So Angel, thank you again for that. So there are two topics now regarding this. Let me dissect that a little more, right? You're talking savings as of today's date, or 6 months from now, or 3 months from now. So according to me, that's today. Okay. Now the other savings is your retirement.
Right.
So how do we channelize that? And people have not thought about retirement money at all. How do we advise people to do that? Because there's a lot of people who don't know much about 401k. They don't know much about IRAs or anything like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's another great question. And when we think about traditional 401k for someone who is employed, you're sort of backing out that number. So let's go back all the way to the gross pay. There's so many payment calculators available from ADP, several websites where you can put the numbers in of your salary and what your withholdings would be so you can determine how much you can allocate towards that 401k. Of course, the maximum is $19,500. It's increasing to $20,500 next year. But some people can't afford to max out their 401ks. It's very rare that you'll find people who completely max for the year, meaning they put up the IRS maximum of that almost $20,000. $20,000 is, I mean, some people would think that they're rich if they had that, right? And
that's right.
We're talking about 70% of people in this country who can't save $1,000. So how can they afford to put the $20,000 into the 401k? You're working at a job that has a 401k match, typically 3% or 6%. I always say start there. At least put in the minimum to get your match because it's free money. And then determine, after you've created your budget and you're managing your expenses and you're building up that savings, determine if you can start allocating additional percentages towards your 401k. So that is the employer sponsored plan. Of course, there are other plans that are available, and there's other vehicles for investing and building wealth.
Sure.
You can contribute to an IRA. There's a $6,000 maximum per year that you can do that outside of work. If you are self-employed, you can look into those self-employed plans to start contributing money to that particular vehicle. And then, of course, there's investing, there's stocks, there's Bitcoin, there's all these cryptocurrencies and various ways to make money. But I always say those are a bit more risky. And I always tell people, do the basics. You have to go back to basics, right? Do your 401k, do your IRA. And if you have a savings in place or you have additional funds that are coming in, whether it be from a bonus from work or maybe a gift, birthday gift, credit card rewards, wherever those funds are coming from, right? Then you may want to look into investing in the stock market, being a little bit more risky. Of course, it's going to yield better returns than having money sitting in your savings account. And I never advise for anyone to leave 10, 15,000, even 5,000 sitting in a savings account because you're not generating a ton of interest. So if they look for high interest savings and put your money somewhere where it's safe, it's liquid, and then start taking on some of those riskier investments.
Of course. Give me a second. Let me go and talk to my audience 1 second. So guys, she just mentioned about cryptocurrency. Like last season 1, we had a guest on my show, and we talked about cryptocurrency, of how risky it is and how simple it is to understand it too at the same time. She came out with a book. So take a look at that episode whenever you get a chance, because it's a great episode. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to tell Angel the same thing too, a little offline, obviously. So Angel, thank you again. So regarding savings, right? One last thing about savings. Do you think it's advisable for people to invest on HSA loans or FSA loans? Those are the health savings account. Do you think those are also emergency money, which is free money for putting in, and then employers are also given in a little input in there too? So what are your thoughts on that?
Now, I personally would not be against the HSA, FSA items. I don't consider that to be a part of your emergency fund. It's a benefit, of course, offered through your employer, and you have to determine which option is best for you, just depending on your family or how much you're spending on medical per year. But that should not be considered a part of your emergency fund. And I want to actually add on, the 401k is not even a part of the emergency fund. Those are separate investments. Your emergency fund is like what you have easy access to go and like pay off whatever emergency or bills you have or that unforeseen expense.
Yeah, thank you again. And HSA is strictly for medical, and it all depends on what are your medical needs are. If your pills are skyrocketing every month, then I think HSA is the right way to go. It all depends on family to family. It's not for everybody. So yeah, thank you again for that. Now, regarding student loans, credit card loans, car loans, how do we tackle those? Because that is a huge one. So let me ask you one simple question that everyone asks, okay? There's a credit line for a credit card for, let's say, $6,000, and they are doing their minimum rate of putting that in there, let's say $150, okay? And the interest is, let's say, I don't know, 26, 22, I don't know what's going on right now, but let's say 22, right? Now, then your credit is keep on going, and your credit score is great, but your credit card revolving credit loan is really high. So you're catch 22. How do you pay off and you're in a budget? Does that make sense? So how do we get away from that?
So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning, where people should avoid being close to their credit limit. And again, this is a topic that's not always discussed, and people are being extended credit and credit cards and thinking, let's say you're extended a credit card with a $20,000 limit, And let's say this is the first time you've ever had a card with this high of a limit. The first thing you're probably thinking is, gosh, what can I buy? What can I buy that I've always wanted to buy that I didn't have the money to buy? And that's what most consumers do. So I always say, when you have a credit card or line of credit, whatever it is, you do not want to utilize more than 30% of that limit. And I know people may be asking, well, why did they even give me this $20,000 limit and I can't use it? Not saying that you can't purchase something, a large purchase, but you definitely don't want to carry a balance that's more than that 30% because it does hurt your credit score. So if you have a card, we're going to take it back to basics. We're going to go to $1,000. So someone who may be in college or graduating from college, and or maybe this is their first experience with credit, they may be offered a lower limit, so $1,000. You don't want to go out and charge $900 and then just say you're going to pay the minimum. You're going to pay that $25 per month. You want to utilize the credit, one, to help build your credit, and two, if it's a card that's a reward based, if it's travel, if it's cash back, whatever it is, you want to take advantage of that option. I always say maybe set up some bills on auto pay. So those regular bills that you pay every month, your light bill, your cell phone bill, even paying for your gas or groceries, and then paying it off because those are items that you've already budgeted for. And so many people will say credit cards are bad, or they will prefer to only pay cash. And I say, you're missing out on a ton of rewards if you're choosing to do that, because there's a smart way to use credit. So you really have to be strategic and think about how you can use it without it being a hindrance, but also be smart about it. And if you're needing to utilize more credit, or you don't necessarily have the money in your emergency fund, ask for a credit line increase. Because if you're charging more, you have to carry that balance. It's going to help even things out, so you're not sort of in that risk area. So someone who has a $900 balance for months over time and their credit limit's only $1,000, they're seen as high risk by the creditor. And it's a very slim chance that they'll be granted a credit line increase at that particular point. So sort of think ahead, be strategic about those financial decisions and how you choose to utilize the line of credit or the credit card.
Yeah, thank you again for making, I guess, my audience understand, because I think majority of, I don't have the percentage, but I'm pretty sure it's a high percentage, that majority of the Americans, and I'm guessing around the world too, because around the world I think they're going through the same similar things too, that we get trapped into this credit card. What is this? The saga? Is that the word that I want to use?
The credit card soap opera.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I have a lot of people that I have talked to offline, obviously, and they have actually done a very intelligent way. And let me go and you tell me if this is right and wrong. Okay. They have a credit card for groceries and gas. They have a credit card only for travels only, meaning vacations or whatever. And then they have another credit card that whatever comes in their way from the month and month. So basically whatever purchases, clothing or shoes or whatever. And that just pays off on its own. Do you think that's a good plan that that person is doing? Or do you think that we should come up with a different plan on that?
So if someone is doing that, they're very smart. Well, either they're self-taught or someone told them how to utilize credit correctly. Not saying that everyone has to use that same strategy, but I myself use various credit cards for certain things. And again, going back to the type of credit card it is, you may have a credit card issued by or partner with a hotel, right? And you're getting those travel points or from the airline, and you're spending and you're getting those airline points. So you want to use it more often for flights because you're getting 5 times whatever you're spending. Now, some cards do have offers where they'll say you're going to get so much cash back on your groceries, and you may only use that card for groceries. Similar with gas and other categories. So it's super smart to take advantage, again, of those credit cards from that perspective and really being strategic. Again, I do that myself, and I rack up on credit card rewards at the end of the year through all of my cards. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to take these reward points and buy? Am I going to cash it out into a check? Am I going to take a vacation? And it's really a smart way to not have to dip into that emergency fund, especially around the holidays when we tend to spend a little bit more money.
That's right. That's right. So let me go and talk to my audience, and I want to give them a trick, if that's okay. So has anybody have an Amazon account? I'm going to raise my hand. I'm pretty sure she's going to too. You know, if you purchase something, just leave it in the cart and wait for a few days and see that if you need it and don't need it. Majority of the time, you will never need it. And if you do need it, you'll come back on the end of the week and you'll just buy it. But some people, they totally forget about it because that's impulsive buying, right? The other aspect that you can think of is when you buy something, there's an option that you can get within 2 days. I mean, that's what Amazon does, right? But there are other options too, and you never really looked at it. If you really want that the shipping, let's say 7 days later or something, it tells you that you can get $2 back as a reward. Why not take the advantage? Because that's like a coupon for you. So that's one tidbit that I have here. What do you think on that, Angel, on that part?
Well, I haven't heard that trick. So I'm actually going to try that the next time I'm going to buy something on Amazon. So typically I'm not impulsive, but I'm very strategic when it comes to online shopping. So it's either something that I'm looking for and I can't find in the store, or I'm looking for a lower price. But that's not always saying that we need everything that we purchase. So I haven't heard of people doing that, but I would definitely, I would be in favor of people actually taking that advice, especially when you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep. I know so many people who shop on Amazon in the middle of the night. And then they'll forget when they wake up, they forget what they ordered. They're like, what did I buy?
Yeah. So it's better. So it's better to be in the cart and then wake up, obviously nice and awake, and then buy it whenever you think it's right. And I've seen people, they purchase every Fridays. So throughout the week, when they put that in the cart, then at the end of the week, then they realize that, oh, they don't need it.
So
and that has happened.
Let me tell you, when I was working, I used to travel for work, and there was a group of coworkers who would always put their Amazon order in 2 days before we were flying back home. And that was their strategy. They're like, oh, it's Amazon Day. And I was like, what is Amazon Day? And they're like, this is the day that I order everything on Amazon. So when I get home, it's right there at my doorstep. So there are people who are on an Amazon schedule.
Of course, of course. Thank you again for all the tidbits and some tricks and what loans and not loans and credit cards and not credit cards and all that stuff. So let's is it okay if we can talk about your book? You have
Of course.
How many books do you have? It seems like you just never end, do you?
So I have 2 books that are currently published.
Yes.
One is Ballin' on a Budget. That is used for my signature workshops around financial literacy and budgeting, and it's available on Amazon. The other book is geared towards entrepreneurs. It's called Upfront and Entrepreneur's Quick Start Guide. It's co-authored with 2 other amazing business coaches. And I have 2 more books that are releasing in 2022. One book is available for pre-order now, and it's releasing February 26th. It's called I Am in Control of My Finances. Financial affirmation book, 30 days of financial guidance and peace, really to help someone jumpstart and change their mindset around money, because it all starts with 1, the unlearning, but then 2, changing your mindset and how you're viewing money and really being more optimistic, even if you don't have much. The other book that's coming out 1 month later, so the tail end of March of 2022, it's called Developing a Money Mindset. And that is really where I'm saying, okay, take this back to basics, right? How many times am I going to play off of that? But taking that back to basics and changing your mindset around money. The entire book talks about your money journey. I have a template that's available on my website, will be available with the book as well, and teaching people how do you actually map out your money journey? How do you understand where you started from, all of your money highs, your money lows? I've partnered with that particular book with a therapist, so there's insights from a therapist as well. And when we think about like our mental health and therapy, we don't think about how those items impact our finances, and it truly does. And so she touches base from that perspective. So it'll be a very interesting book.
Wow, thank you so much. I want to grab those books whenever I get a chance, because it seems like you have so much tidbits, and I think that will be so helpful for a lot of people that I know, or maybe even myself. So thank you again for that. And before you leave today, do you have any last words for Back to Basics, and how was your journey in Back to Basics? Because it seems like you have a book, and you've done so much, and you came on my show. So what else is there?
There's so much more, but we won't get into it. We don't have time, but I will say the experience has been great. I hope those listening have really learned something, or even, wanted to do something different with their finances, or wanting to take that first step. I always tell people, feel free to reach out, see how I can help, order the book, get your budget together. But the one thing that I would leave guests with today is saying, take a step back, do some self-reflection, and understand your money journey. Start writing it out, writing down where you've been, where you taught about money, understanding your money story. Start sharing that story with your children, having those family conversations if you are not already. How can we become better financially? And then taking the step to create a budget. If you have a budget, revisit it, because the budget doesn't always stay the same. And at the tail end of that, your budget will not look like your friends, your sisters, your neighbors, because no two budgets are the same.
Yeah, Angel, thank you again for coming on my show and give me some feedbacks on how to handle my money or not handle my money. I don't know how we are advising people in these tough times, and it's okay to talk about it in public. And I think this is a start, and this start might be just the beginning of a new era, I guess. So thank you again, and stay blessed, and we will stay in touch for sure.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. So guys, we spoke with Angel today, and we talked about the basics of finance, and we talked about what to do and what not to do, and how to save money. Just go to Amazon and maybe get $2 back, or maybe even more. Go do a credit card and get a cash back. There's always ways to do it, and how to get money in your pocket. So we're all technically millionaires if you think about it in a certain way. As usual, as always, there is a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and hopefully Angel will like it too. So here's a quote of the day. The quote of the day is, "Money is a terrible taster, but an excellent servant." Wow, that is crazy, isn't it? But guys, as usual, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, there are three things that we love this show. One is the content, the other is the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, and I will see you next week, every week on Back to Basics. Guys, take care, God bless, and keep on commenting as much as you can, because you know what? Good, bad, or evil comments, either way, it'll make my show stronger, because I'll learn from you guys every week. Guys, take care. God bless. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
And that's just within the X-ray. This goes beyond. This goes into our training now. We can dive into aspects that will create memories for us, that instead of memorizing or going through didactics, later on in the field, while we're taking care of a patient, we can actually have a memory while we were immersed in VR of a case, of a situation, and then we can recognize it, treat it, and save lives.
Yeah. Thank you again.